Hello friends, welcome back to another episode of our ProRevenge series, where you'll get your daily dose of satisfaction by listening to others get what they deserve. In this episode, there are going to be 7 stories. You'll hear about cocky business owners, a luxury car sales team, and an entitled tenant getting their just desserts. I hope you stay for the stories today and subscribe for future videos. This story is titled, "They Put Him Down, So He Put Them Out of Business." This first story isn't mine but belongs to my boss from the 1980s. My boss became the showrunner for the shop he worked at. He was in charge of everything and effectively owned the place in every way except actual ownership. Eventually, he got tired of running the place without having any ownership. So, he talked to some banks and investors and gathered enough money to buy the company. He arranged a meeting with the owners, who were very hands-off and trusted him to run everything, to present his proposal. Normally, a single meeting wouldn't be enough for something like this, and he didn't expect it to be. However, the owners had different ideas. He presented them the offer, and they laughed at him. They asked him why they would sell the business to him when they made so much more money watching him run it. They laughed him out of the meeting and said they would never sell to anyone, especially an employee. Needless to say, my boss was hurt and furious. He put in his 2 weeks' notice on the spot, which they also laughed at, believing he wouldn't leave since they were the top dog in the industry. Imagine their surprise when he did. A few months later, my boss had purchased a competitor business and rebranded it, but was having difficulty gaining new business to supplement the weak list of clients that the company came with. As I mentioned, my boss ran everything at the old company and was always very hands-on. This included sales, and he personally interacted with all their customers at some point. This particular company made all employees sign a contract stating they wouldn't actively try to steal clients away should the employee leave. My boss knew he'd be in enormous legal trouble if he did so. He couldn't go directly to his old customers as a sales call. Instead, what he did was call each client to apologize for his sudden departure from Company A. He told them that he had enjoyed every minute dealing with them and wished them all the best, but he would no longer be handling their calls and face-to-face meetings. He said nothing more. Naturally, considering the good relationship he'd had with these clients, they asked where he'd gone and showed interest in following him. Fast forward a few years, my boss's new company now has almost all the original clients from Company A, who tried to sue when they found out about the clients but lost. The owners of Company A approached my boss. They told him that Company A was going bankrupt, and unless they could find a buyer, they were going to lose everything in the process. They asked if he would be interested in buying the company now, maybe even using it as a second location. My boss smiled and told them, "Why would I buy your business when I will make so much more money watching you lose it?" This story is titled, "Luxury Car Dealership Wants to Treat Customer Like Dirt, Ends Up Washing His Car Instead." This story isn't mine. It happened to my ex-classmate's dad, but it's too sweet not to share. His dad is a pretty wealthy guy and owns his own construction business. My classmate always showed up in fancy clothes and cars. One day the dad walked into a dealership. He was interested in buying a Mercedes G-Wagon. He went inside and was ignored for almost an hour while other customers were treated. Eventually, a couple of salesmen approached the dad and asked him what he was doing there. The dad started asking about the cars, but the salesmen were very dismissive and sarcastic in response to him. They clearly weren't taking him seriously and began to leave. The dad became irritated and asked what their problem was. They argued for a minute when the manager came out and told the dad to leave. The dad had just come from work and was wearing slightly dirty jeans, boots, and a t-shirt. He's also a darker-skinned individual. Both of these factors probably made him look lower class in their eyes. Little did they know, a few weeks later, the dad ended up purchasing the G-Wagon at another Mercedes dealership. He negotiated free car washes for life at any Mercedes dealership in the area as he traded in one of his luxury cars. Guess what? The dad ended up going to the first dealership and threw his keys on the front counter, demanding a car wash. The same manager eventually came to object, but the dad showed him all the paperwork. The manager looked a bit shocked and begrudgingly got the process started. The dad has been going back almost every day for car washes. He always cheekily smiles at the staff members with a smug grin as a greeting, especially the 2 salesmen. They now just hang their heads in shame and walk away whenever they see him. Guys, don't judge a book by its cover. I'm pretty sure a Mercedes G-Wagon starts at $125,000, and the AMG model can be upwards of $150,000. That's some pretty good commission those guys missed out on. I don't know how much percentage they get, but I'm pretty sure it's a lot of money. This story is entitled, "Neighbor Threatens Dogs and I Break." Years ago, my mother and I had just moved to a new dog-friendly apartment complex. We had 2 dogs, one was a Bichon Shih Tzu, and the other was a Terrier-Poodle mix. Because of them, we were excited for the community dog park right next to the building. Also to note, our building was filled with dog owners, each with dogs ranging from small to huge. Our apartment was on the first floor in the back of the building, all the way in the corner. It was a nice private area for us with how the apartments were situated. Since one of our dogs is a terrier, he can be a bit barky when we're not home. However, when we are home, we have a clicker to get his attention, which he's been trained to stop barking and come to whoever has the clicker. Due to our work hours, I was usually home in the morning, and Mom was home in the afternoon, leaving him alone for a few hours during the day. After a month of moving into our new apartment, we received a note on the door. It was from one of the neighbors. It stated, "Dear neighbor, I understand you're new to the complex, but it's rude to allow your dog to bark. It's ruining my sleep before I go to work, and my job is extremely important. I don't care how you do it, but shut your dog up." My mom turned in the note right away to the leasing office, as she wasn't sure what to do with it. That's when the office told us not to worry, because he had done this to every dog owner in the building. They did ask us if we could find ways to calm him down when we're not home. So, we did. We found out that it was kids that he was barking at, so we closed off that area for him when we went out and no one was home. We also started playing calming music as a way to help as well. Another week went by, and this time we heard a knock at the door. We went outside and met our angry neighbor. He explained that our dog had kept him up every day and woke him up with his hours of barking. Both of us had been home that day, and our dog had been a good boy and not been excessively barking. I still remember what he told us when I explained it. He said, "I know what I heard. If you can't control your dog, then I'm going to call animal control and have them both taken away from you. I did it before and have no problem getting rid of your dogs too. I'm very rich, and the apartment needs my money, so do something to shut your dogs up, or else." After that, my mom, being a really nice person, apologized, and we went back in. A few moments later, I walked out to get the mail and discovered from another neighbor that he had gone to 3 other apartments and made similar threats. After some convincing, my mom told the apartment manager what happened, and we were told not to worry and to contact them if he did that again. We also found out that the apartment manager had offered him an apartment away from the noisy dogs, but he declined, since the dogs were the problem and not him. However, after what he'd done, my mom began to show signs of anxiety and bought a bark collar for the dog. While I didn't like the idea, it put her at ease to go outside of the apartment. We made sure to only put it on when we were both not home. A month went by peacefully. Then, once again, we got a knock on the door. This time, it was animal control. They had received an anonymous report of a dog being abused and neglected in our home. They explained that someone had said our dogs were barking because of neglect, and they were told that the person suspected us of beating it on a regular basis. My mom invited the lady inside and explained the situation, and we showed her everything we could to prevent the dogs from being taken away. The nice lady noticed how playful and happy our dogs were and figured it was just another false call. She explained that they had received a few of those from an anonymous concerned neighbor for multiple other apartments in the building. The animal control lady left and told us that if they're threatened again, to try to get it on record. This event turned my mom into a paranoid person who became afraid to leave the house, thinking that if she did, we would lose our beloved pups. Normally, I'm the calmest person in my family, never really letting anyone get to me. But this neighbor, oh my goodness, he had purposely done this to hurt us. So I did my research and discovered a few things that could legally help us. With the new information on certain laws and leasing terms, I formed a plan. During a weekend when my mom was visiting my aunt in another state, I began my plan. I started by printing out a few things and then sat outside with my phone and a speaker. I began to play a video of a dog barking really loud. I had figured out which apartment was his, thanks to a few neighbors who were also tired of being harassed. I sat there, looking across the courtyard to where his apartment was. I waited with a huge smile on my face, and as I hoped, he stormed out and headed over to where I was. I turned off my video and turned on my recorder without him noticing. His face was red with anger as he looked at me sitting there with a smile. I said, "I'm sorry, can I help you?" He said, "You! I told you what I'll do to your family if you don't stop your mutt from ruining my sleep. Now I'm going to have them taken away from you, and you'll be kicked out for not doing as I said. I gave you a chance. I hope that when they take your dogs, they're put down, and you and your mom live inside a cardboard box." I gave him a fake oh dear look and said, "So you're saying that I'm not allowed to make loud noises, including..." my dogs barking between the legal hours of 7 a.m. and 11 p.m., and that I went against the law by doing so, I gave him a huge smile and turned off my recorder on my phone. The neighbor was confused now, and I asked him to have a seat. I had a few things to show him. I pulled out my papers and handed him the first one. It was the county's noise ordinance laws. In our county, a dog's bark was considered the same amount of sound as an allowed appliance, so they can bark between the hours of 7 a.m. and 11 p.m. Before he could talk, I pulled out another paper. This one stated that it's against leasing terms to threaten another neighbor, and after one warning, the apartment complex had the right to revoke their lease. He looked at me with an understanding of what he'd done now. I silenced him and pulled out the last paper. This one was another leasing term that I found. His face, after reading this one, turned white. The last one talked about how it was a complete violation of leasing terms to go on another renter's property and threaten them. Those found guilty of this violation would have their lease revoked immediately and be forced to leave the apartment within a set time. The scared look on his face was priceless as I silently got up and walked back into my apartment. After he left, I called the leasing office, explained what just happened, and agreed to email the recording to them right away. A week later, my mom came home with some news that she'd learned from the leasing office. The man had been evicted from his apartment and would be leaving later that week. I found out that my actions caused the other dog owners to come forward and admit what he'd been doing to all of them. After that, there was never another complaint. My mom still gets anxiety attacks once in a while, but has been getting help to ease those worries. As for me, I don't regret what I did. I just feel bad that it had to come to this. That entitled guy got what he deserved, complaining about the dogs barking when he lives in an apartment that allows dogs. Now he may be the one living in a cardboard box. I also love the fact that he said he's rich and that the apartment needs his money. No, they don't, sir. A new tenant will take his apartment in less than a month, I can guarantee that. This story is Title Can't Sue Me. Be careful what you wish for. My father is a lawyer who earns 80% of his living taking cases where people have been taken advantage of. Not all are poor, but many are, like an elderly gentleman scammed out of $1,000 by an insurance company or people. Charged an extra 3% for a mortgage. A woman who bought a townhouse in a new development came to my father for help. Her new home immediately developed a mold problem from a leaky roof, causing about $5,000 in damages. Not a big deal for a developer who just built 200 units. My father wrote a matter-of-fact letter to the developer, explaining the situation and requesting that he fix it. He didn't want money. It took 30 minutes to listen to the woman explain the story, read her sales contract, and another 30 minutes to draft the letter. The developer responded, "I'm not responsible for the subcontractor or his work, and it's in the sales contract. There is nothing you can do. You can't even sue me." The contract was probably poorly written and perhaps onerous, but the point was clear. This developer was greedy and thought he could bully people. My father's client was one of the first to buy and move into one of the 200 units. Every Sunday, the development held an open house where prospective buyers came to see the units and speak to the sales team. My father instructed his client to take photos of the damage, as if the mold was getting married, pictures galore of every instance of damage in the house. On Sunday, they showed up with the album, stood on the sidewalk next to the sales office, and invited every single person who walked by to look at it. They did this for 2 Sundays in a row. After that, they received a letter from the developer practically begging them to let him fix the damage. Apparently, they closed the sales office, and the vast majority of units remained unsold. I don't recall the exact figure, but my father also secured a cash payment from the developer, and the damage was fixed. This story is titled, "I Planted Over 5,000 Dandelion Weeds in My Neighbor's Garden." Here's some backstory. I have a 4-year-old Cocker Spaniel named Charlie, and he likes to poop. I let him out in my front garden every morning and evening for his toilet routine. We don't have a boundary fence where my garden and my neighbor's side starts, just a row of bushes. Every week, I collect the poop before it becomes a disturbing amount. I've been doing this for the past 4 years to keep my front garden looking good and not smelly. One day, I came home from work to find my neighbors unhappy that there was dog poop in my front garden. I instantly went to collect what was there. It wasn't much and was nowhere near the boundary where our gardens met. A week later, my neighbor complained again about the dog poop in my garden. This time, he threatened to hurt my dog if he continued to poop there. I wasn't so nice about it and stated that it's my garden, and my dog can do as he pleases. I know dog poop can be annoying, but when it's not in your garden and there's no smell due to decent airflow and an open front garden, is it really justified to threaten a man's dog over some poop? After months of petty complaints and shade thrown at me every day about having a dog, I decided to declare war on my neighbors. I knew these people pretty well. They had just moved in, and we let them use our Wi-Fi for a couple of months until they got theirs sorted. I picked up that they were very OCD. They cut their back garden every week and painted the entire bottom layer of their house to match their fence. This was all the fuel I needed to exact my revenge. My first step was small. I knew they liked things to match, so I painted my fence gate bright pink instead of matching it with my fence. They hated it so much that they begged me to correct the color. I did, but the hate continued. I had to come up with something so evil yet genius that couldn't be traced back to me. I planted over 5,000 dandelion seeds in their front and back gardens under the cover of night, ensuring they were in places not easily mowed. 3 months later, their garden was covered in weeds, growing through all the slabbing and patched all over. It took them over 3 days to clear the weeds and around $100 in weed killer. Long story short, a lousy neighbor threatened to hurt my dog, so I planted 5,000 weeds in their garden. This story is titled, Act Like the Neighbor from Hell and Threaten My Grandparents? Enjoy losing your job and house. A while back, my grandparents, who lived in the same house for decades, got new neighbors, a wife, a husband, and their 2 kids. They seemed fairly nice. The husband spoke to my grandfather a few times when they were outside and seemed genuine. He said he was a correctional officer, so his hours were strange, and he might come and go at odd times depending on his schedule. A few months later, they went on vacation and asked my grandfather to watch their house to ensure no one was lurking around or breaking in. A few days into their vacation, my grandfather heard their dog whining in the backyard. He looked over their fence and found the dog tied up on about a 6-foot lead with no water around. He couldn't get into the yard, so he called animal control, who came and took the dog. When the neighbors returned, the husband went ballistic. He hit my grandparents' door so hard they thought it would break. He got in my grandfather's face, called him every ugly word he could think of, and told him that if he ever caught him outside on his own, he'd make them pay for losing their dog. It only escalated from there. In the middle of the night, someone took the large community dumpster from the back alley and threw it over the fence into my grandparents' pool. The kids threw eggs from their backyard all over my grandparents' back patio and house, and someone threw a grapefruit through their window. The police were called every time but said we couldn't prove who was doing it, and they weren't caught in the act, so there was nothing they could do. I had enough and started making calls up the ladder with the correctional institution. I spoke to the warden at his facility, who said he would look into the issue. A few days later, the guy showed up at my grandparents' house while I was there, going off again and threatening to harm my grandfather to teach me a lesson about messing with his life. I went out to confront him and he walked off, saying he wouldn't hit me because he'd lose his job and I wasn't worth it, but he continued screaming and threatening me and my grandfather as he walked back to his house. This time I was ready and recorded everything from the moment he started slamming on the door. I called the warden and told him I had video evidence of the threats and the guy's hostile nature. A week later, 2 guys from the Associate Director of Corrections visited my grandparents' house. They sat down for over an hour wanting to know every detail of the events, from the dog to the vandalism to the threats. I showed them the video I took and copies of the police reports we'd filed. Apparently, this guy had a temper issue and was at this facility because he'd been told to take a transfer or be terminated from his previous one. He ended up losing his job, and his house was foreclosed on. They left in the middle of the night not long after we met with the director. Thankfully, all is well since they left, and my grandparents now have wonderful new neighbors who own a local restaurant and have even brought food over a few times. This story is titled, Try to Scam My Dad Out of £20,000? Prepare to have regulators on your case and pay through the nose. This happened a couple of years ago. My dad occasionally sends money back to his home country via money transfer companies. He had recently sold his shop and wanted to send some money back home. My dad isn't the most savvy, so my brother and I regularly keep an eye on him to ensure he doesn't get scammed. We were worried when he said he wanted to send such a large amount in one go and suggested using a bank. While it would cost a fair amount in fees, it would be legitimate and arrive on time. However, he wanted to go with a money transfer company he saw in a newspaper ad, as they had lower fees and promised the money would arrive in about a week. We accompanied him to the shop to discuss the cost and delivery time. The guy gave his best assurances that the money would arrive and offered a good price. We paid by debit card to ensure a trace in case he tried anything funny. A couple of days went by and my dad checked his bank account back home to see if the money had arrived. We told him to give it time. After 2 weeks, still nothing. He called the company, and the guy said it was just delayed, nothing to worry about. A week later, another call, another excuse. The excuses became less professional, eventually claiming they had to use the money to pay off the previous guy who sent money, and when the next guy paid, we'd get ours. We investigated our options with the bank for claimbacks, but they weren't helpful since it wasn't a fraud case, and my dad had paid willingly. We went to the shop, gave the guy one last chance for the benefit of the doubt, but got the same flimsy assurances. Nothing happened. In the UK, all financial organizations, no matter how small, are heavily regulated by government authorities. My brother, a banker, knew exactly which authorities to contact. He launched a complaint against the organization, sending proof of payment and explaining how they refused to send the money. Within a couple of days, the regulators came down hard on the guy. He started chasing my dad, begging him to withdraw the complaint as it was affecting his business, and the regulator was threatening investigations and a possible shutdown. He promised to send the money soon, but pleaded for the complaint to be withdrawn. We knew that withdrawing the complaint would make it nearly impossible to reapply until he paid up. Eventually, he paid the full £20,000 and an additional £1,500 in compensation for the distress caused. He also issued a letter of apology to my dad, and the case was withdrawn. It felt good to make him realize he can't mess with everyone he perceives as an easy target. As a reader dropping a comment on these stories, I'm absolutely hooked on this mix of cunning revenge, entitled Jerks Getting Their Comeuppance, and satisfying justice. These tales are packed with nuclear-level consequences and clever tactics that make you cheer for the underdog. Here's my take on each, written like I'm chiming in on a forum. They put him down, so he put them out of business. Oh man, this is savage. The owner's laughing at the boss's offer to buy the company and bragging about exploiting his hard work. Big mistake. Him walking away, buying a competitor, and quietly letting their clients follow him is a masterclass in subtle revenge. Turning their own words back on them with, "Why would I buy your business when I'll make more watching you lose it?" is ice cold. The fact that he didn't break any contracts and still tanked their business is just chef's kiss. The commenter's point about not judging a book by its cover applies here too. Those owners underestimated him and paid the price. Anyone else seen someone take down a company this smoothly? Luxury car dealership wants to treat customer like dirt, ends up washing his car instead. This one's so satisfying. The dealership ignoring and dismissing a wealthy guy just because of his work clothes and skin color is infuriating. But him buying a G-Wagon elsewhere and getting free car washes for life? Genius. Showing up daily to make those rude salesmen wash his car with their heads hung low is peak petty. The commenter's right. Bet those guys are kicking themselves over that missed commission. Don't judge customers by their appearance, folks. Got any other stories of snobby businesses eating their words? Entitled Neighbor Threatens Dogs and I Break, this neighbor threatening to have OP's dogs taken away over barking in a dog-friendly complex is unhinged. The escalation to animal control complaints and false abuse claims? That's next-level cruelty. OP's plan to bait him with a barking video and record his threats was brilliant. Those leasing papers were the perfect trap. Getting him evicted with the whole community backing them up is so cathartic. The commenter's quip about him living in a cardboard box now is spot on. He thought he was untouchable. Anyone else dealt with a neighbor this obsessed with control? Can't sue me? Be careful what you wish for. The developer brushing off a mold issue and taunting "you can't even sue me" was a huge misstep. OP's dad and his client turning the open house into a mold expose is such a smart move. Hitting the wallet where it hurts, shutting down sales and forcing a fix plus a cash payout, that's how you do it. The commenter's note about the developer's greed is so true. Thinking he could bully a homeowner backfired hard. Ever seen someone tank a business's sales like this? I planted over 5,000 dandelion weeds in my neighbor's garden. This is petty revenge perfection. The neighbor threatening to hurt OP's dog over poop in OP's garden is ridiculous, especially in an open area with airflow. Planting 5,000 dandelion seeds in their OCD perfect garden? Evil genius. The pink fence gate as a starter was a nice touch, but the weed invasion taking 3 days and $100 to clear is next level. The commenter's right, don't mess with someone's pet. Got any other creative yard-based revenge stories? Act like the neighbor from hell and threaten my grandparents? Enjoy losing your job and house. This neighbor's unhinged behavior, neglecting their dog, vandalizing a pool, and threatening grandparents, is straight up villainous. OP escalating to the correctional facility's warden with video evidence was a power move. Losing his job and house to foreclosure? That's karma in overdrive. The commenter's point about the new restaurant-owning neighbors bringing food is so wholesome. Love the happy ending. Anyone else taken down a bully neighbor with evidence like this? Try to scam my dad out of £20,000? Prepare to have regulators on your case and pay through the nose. This money transfer scammer thinking he could string along OP's dad with flimsy excuses was bold, but messing with a banker's family? Bad move. The brother's regulatory complaint shutting down the business and forcing a £21,500 payout is so satisfying. The apology letter was the cherry on top. Bet that guy's still sweating. The commenter's note about not messing with perceived easy targets is spot on. Ever caught a scammer in their own game like this? That's it for this episode of our ProRevenge. If you aren't subscribed, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because I upload videos almost every day. See you in the next one.